Morning, Paul.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Oh dear.
Be right back. I'm going to grab something off the printer.
I complimented him on dealing with China. I'm not going nuts. And I approve this message.
On behalf of everyone at Penn State Wilkes-Barre, we congratulate our 2020 graduates.
Great job, class of 2020.
You've made us proud. Newest alumni, you are always be Penn State.
More than ever, we're seeing patients safely in person or on locations, by phone. Back on schedule.
On radio.
Good morning, America. It's 8 a.m. The battle over reopening.
Someone.
Who's got the radio on? Yeah,
Not me.
there we go.
Some states race to reopen.
It's like being in a psychedelic drug kit. Sound coming from everywhere.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm going to mute everyone just because we don't know where this is coming from. Okay, if everyone could just make sure that their TVs and radios are turned down.
Ginny, will you be able to turn on screen sharing for me? I know I have a presentation, but when I go to, it says it's disabled.
How's that?
Stand by. Can you see it?
We can see it.
Awesome.
Right. If Dr. Kachardi will be joining us?
Negative, he will not.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
So, good morning, everyone. This is Richard Cobley. Are we ready to get going?
I believe we are. Has anyone heard from Mr. Knight or Mr. Werner? Kevin Werner? He's on the one of the parent representatives, but I don't believe that he's attended any meetings.
He, Ginny, hang
I'm
on,
sorry.
hang on. Ginny, the last I heard from him was at the meeting on April 1. He's working down at Tunkhannock, and I think he was pretty
I'm not on camera.
doing,
How do you get on camera? No.
Down here, this is different than.
Wait a minute.
Okay, Mr. Cobley, if you'd like to take it away.
Sure. So first up on the agenda for today was a status of the asbestos-related work at Northeast. Is that something that Mr. DePietro and Mr. Doherty was going to brief us?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think we could probably kick it right to Rocco for his presentation. I think some of the things he and I have been discussing, and even the first, I want to say 3 items on the agenda today, are probably covered within his presentation.
Great, Paul. So I'll start. Thanks, Richard. As Paul said, I have I don't know, half a dozen, well, maybe it's longer, 20 slides with some pictures. Just to give you an update, I think on the first 3 items on the agenda. So I'll go through it and you guys can just comment as necessary. It is an update on the specific project at Northeast. There's a larger, what are we doing with asbestos stuff slide or 2, and then there is an indoor air quality mold, kind of a basic outline of some of the protocols in place to control and manage mold and moisture issues within school. So I'll just kind of roll probably half hour's worth of yapping. But if at any point in time I say something that you guys want to comment, just pipe up and let me know. Everybody cool?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Excellent. So hopefully the slides will advance and you see Northeast update slide. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hang on, I gotta get to you differently. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
No, not working at all. Sorry about that. I got it. Thank you.
All right. Excellent. So this is just kind of a running tab of what's been going on. I just kind of keep updating the dates so we can look back and see. Obviously, timing is of less of a concern in the midst of COVID pandemic, but the latest updates since our last meeting is the abatement has been completed. And that includes both the area underneath the auditorium, which had pipe insulation and damaged insulation around the outside of the ductwork that ran underneath there. I'll show you some pictures. And then some additional cleaning of what we call the duct room, this interstitial space between the auditorium and the new building where the air right now has just been free flowing and is going to be ducted. So that work is completed from an asbestos standpoint. It's been cleared through a HERA protocol, safe for occupancy by the unprotected individuals. And now Harold Newell and the Scranton Electric folks are in there on a regular basis working the installation of a duct system that will take clean air from the fan system and then direct it right underneath to the little bells underneath the seats. And that is ongoing. conservatively, he indicated kind of mid-June for completion. They did complete air balancing on the auditorium end of last week to certify the fan speed and volume of air, which is a critical part of the calculation to know how the size of the ducts that they have to install. So that is done, and I believe air balancing for the new site occurs this week, along with the complete sealing of the fan room itself. You'll recall there was some abatement above that fan room for the new side, the 1931 side that was authorized. The abatement was done a while ago. They are just now at a point where they're sealing that room to completely isolate it. So all is well at Northeast, I guess, is the short story. And things are moving along. These are just some pictures of the completed project. This is now what the underside of the auditorium looks like, including pipe. Yes, Ro?
Rocker, I'm going to have to leave the meeting and come back, get your display. So I'm going to leave the meeting and come back, okay?
Yeah, is everybody else seeing the pictures? It's not me, is it?
No,
No, it's me. I can't even leave the meeting. For some reason or other, I've gotten something completely crazy. So I'm going to close it out and resume in. Sorry about that, guys. Keep going.
Okay, no problem. All right, so again, this is a photograph of the underside, which was cleaned, and the pipe insulation. Again, just another photo. And in this photo, let's see if I can, this was a bit unnerving. Last time I was on this and somebody started drawing, things were a little dicey, but hopefully you can see this area up here. These are the bells that we refer to. So when we're referring to what this ductwork is going to look like, it will be a trough that runs even with this beam. And then from here, there'll be individual ducts that branch off to these bells, completely isolating it from this room itself. So great job. I mean, everybody did their part, and the area looks really good and amazing. This is another area of what we call the duct room. Again, one side of this room is the can't blame anybody but me. Clear.
Maybe you were the guy that bombed the school board meeting.
No. So so you see my mouse. One side of this is the new building. One side is the auditorium. This is now what Paul refers to as the fallout shelter, which doesn't look like a fallout shelter anymore. With appropriate lighting, it's actually not bad. Certainly wouldn't want to be educating down there, but don't hesitate at all to breathe the air that's coming out of there. This is the courtyard. So this is the top side of that same room. Again, the interstitial space, if you will, between the two buildings. This area was cleaned, and I believe it's being prepped for resealing. Carl or Paul might be able to speak to that, but this was just not a healthy scene. I'm sorry, Carl, go ahead.
Yeah, that's correct. D&M Construction was in there to look at the site. We're waiting on their quote. So yes, all of that will be taken care of hopefully by the end of the week.
Great. Yeah.
The inside of the room, just to add to what you were talking about, Rock, we also had some roof leads in that area that was leaking. Cosgrove went in there and they wrapped all of that work up yesterday. The 2 leads were repaired. Everything is looking good, and the water should flow the way it's intended to.
Excellent.
So that work was all done.
Yeah, a much healthier, much safer environment here now as a result of, and this wasn't a massive cost here. This was relatively minor, but it did get the required attention it needed. So what remains, it was still waiting on some approvals. Scranton Fire has not been terribly responsive, but we should have, again, an occupancy concurrence from them. We don't see any reason. We know the number is significantly higher than the plan, so I think that's, they're in the midst of pandemic as well. There's a building permit issued for the HVAC work, which is obviously ongoing. We did write the letter to the EPA and did receive some kind of concurrence back that basically indicated, well, we can't give you specific approval. It appears as though you're following the ADHERA rules. So I think that's about as solid as we can get in terms of concurrence. And we certainly agree that the separation of the building isolates the old area. So kind of all systems go from our standpoint, but there is some procedural stuff we want to have in the file before we put a bow on this. And again, the Department of Education has basically indicated, and Missy can speak to this as well, that as long as everybody else is okay with it, we're okay with it. So I think we're all pretty comfortable with the plan going forward. But again, COVID has kind of derailed everybody, as you would imagine.
Rocco, if I can, and we did have a meeting with the fire inspector from Scranton, and he did not see any issue within the building. What we're waiting on from them is just in writing saying, yep, you're good to go. But when the gentleman was on site, he said, I don't see any issue at all. There's enough emergency exits. There's enough space for the students you want to bring in. And the calculation for the occupancy on the student side, I think, was 1,247, which is more than enough for the student population and the staff. It is a very, very large building. So that's all good. I don't foresee an issue with getting, the Scranton Fire to sign off on it. Again, everybody's kind of being pulled in different directions with COVID right now. But when the gentleman was on site, he did not have any issue with what was going on.
Correct. Yeah, agreed. So what remains is the ventilation work, basically the Scranton Electric work of ducting the auditorium, and then in this space that's in the picture will essentially fill with ductwork. It's the intake that the board originally approved to take the air that's on the left side of that photograph and move it to the right side of that photograph, so it won't just blow through this part of the building and in an inefficient manner. It will be efficiently directed right to where it belongs. So very solid ventilation system. So that's the update on Northeast.
Quick question,
So,
excuse
yeah,
me.
Rich.
With the EPA correspondence that you received, I assume it's some sort of letter or email, or I know that was a key gate to, I guess, the criteria for the administration to reopen the building.
Rocco, I could speak to that if you want.
Yeah, of course.
The letter was prepared by Courtyard, which I sent to the EPA, and the EPA wrote an email back to me that basically Rocco already explained. So I received an email back from Mr. What's his
Ponak.
Ponak, right?
Rich Ponak.
Yes.
So I guess go on that a little more. So we're satisfied with the response for the EPA, their concurrence, I guess, that the building is safe.
Yeah, they wouldn't.
Right. So
they told us to continue to work with the environmental experts, and I'm going to go back to Rocco for that because according to Dr. Courtyard, in his words, that is the best that we're going to get back from them. Rocco, you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I think the letter obviously outlined how we were going to modify the management plan. and again, you guys are familiar with this. The separation of the building is really the key. So that was the premise of our position, was we were going to separate and we were going to change the management plan to basically eliminate the 1906 side as a school building as defined by AHIRA, therefore removing it from the management plan. And their response, it was twofold. One, we don't give that kind of advice. And secondly, everything you're doing appears to comply with the HERA. So I think short of going to the mountain here, that is, again, what Dr. Cacciardi indicated, is as good as we're going to get. We're comfortable as your environmental consultants, and it appears as though they're comfortable.
So is the
I can quickly read exactly what the letter or what the email said back to me, so that you can hear it, because obviously there's some questions here. So Superintendent McTiernan, EPA is not in a position to concur on the Scranton School District's proposed plan to occupy the 1931 structure and auditorium while isolating the 1906 structure from school functions. It appears that the proposed plan is in compliance with the HERA, but I encourage the district to continue working with your environmental consultants and continuing reviewing EPA AHIRA regulations and guidance documents. If you have any further questions, please feel free to contact me. That was it.
Thank you. So the next step, the administration, the district is relying on the experts, Cacciardi and Associates. You'll update the AHIRA management plans. Is there any other recommendation or position that the environmental experts need to submit to the district to certify, in their expert opinion, that the building is safe to occupy?
Yes, I believe that that's what Rocco just covered with regards to the Scranton Fire. When he says the file is not complete, we're waiting for the Scranton Fire Department to put things in writing. Rocco, what else are we waiting for?
I guess external to the district, the only thing is the Scranton Fire letter. Internal would be the management plan that would be, signed by Joe as a management planner, Pennsylvania licensed management planner. So once he signs off on the management plan, that's internal document. There's nothing else that needs to happen.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's a great segue, Richard, to the next, which was where are we with management plans? And Paul made an important discovery, yes, much like a little Lewis and Clark expedition into the bowels of the admin building, and identified for us the original 1988 building inspections and management plans, which were provided for the district. So we do have copies of those, and they're good, important documents. They identify the original set of sampling that was included in the district. Includes obviously buildings they no longer own. But I believe, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, we have copies of every management plan and building inspection for current district buildings.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And we found these in an area of the building they shouldn't have been in. They were buried behind lots of boxes, lots of other things in a room that just got stockpiled with things over the years. But as we were cleaning out that room the other day, Carl Puglisi and I were cleaning out the room the other day. I came across these, and my eyes almost popped out of my head. I couldn't believe that we actually, still had these documents, and I immediately called Rocco, and I said, "You got to get down here and see this." And he left with the copy in his possession of all of them. So that's real good historical stuff for us, historical information for us to have.
That's great. That's one. It bookends what we need to do.
Yes, it does. It gives us a great because you know, for the potential for compounding and error, right? If a mistake was made in 1988 and folks just go off of that original document, you know, you can compound that. So it give us a great opportunity to look at what was originally sampled in terms of building materials, what may have been abated since then, what may need to be resampled, given the materials that are in place. So it's a great, as you said, bookend row to the process. That being said, we do have the Northeast inspection as well, and there's a couple of other areas that will need some sampling. Mike Baltricitis from our shop has got the responsibility for doing that sampling, and he indicated to me that certainly by the end of the month he'll have that whatever sampling may need to happen and an updated management plan over to Joe Courtyard for signature by the end of the month. So that'll be in place, and as I said earlier, with that coupled with the Scranton Fire letter gives us everything that we need to move forward with reoccupancy when and if we ever get back to school in an in-person manner. So there'll be other management plans. Your management plans are in place. They're compliant. They're based on the 2019 re-inspections, which were done by licensed individuals. Certainly we have some points of clarification and some additional sampling that we're doing. But for the most part, all of the management plans are in place. And once we get Northeast updated, we'll be kind of ready to rock and roll, I guess, from an asbestos standpoint anyway, in a much better position than we were a couple months ago. The other area that's tied to this is all kind of meshes together is the summer abatement program. So this was started by the previous environmental consultant, and we started to take a look at those and, you know, kind of peeling apart what was in the abatement projects. These are very large, going to be healthy dollar amount abatements that are going to occur over the summer. They were originally packaged up in 5 different packages, 5 bid packages, 5 RFPs, 5 potentially separate contractors that all would require oversight, and there would be some additional costs there. We've consolidated them because of a combination of we got some additional time, and there's some materials that are determined through some sampling not to be asbestos containing. So we've taken it from 5 packages to essentially 2, as represented by the charts on the right, as to what's grouped together. 12 schools to 11, although 5 of those are a little bit misleading because there are some very small things, like Scranton Memorial Stadium's got like 10 or 15 elbows, and one area's got 5 square feet of flue patch, like a furnace cement that goes into a chimney. So it literally is a half day's worth of work. So a lot of them are small packages, less than a couple of days, but the big ones, obviously, West Side High School and South Intermediate have, you know, some serious 30 days worth of work kind of stuff. So those will be hopefully ready to go. We did some additional sampling at about 4 schools late last week or early this week, including Armstrong, Adams. I don't remember the other ones off the top of my head, but there's probably a handful of additional samples we still have to get back, and it looks like we'll end up with about 99 work areas across those 11 schools that should get awarded in June. And again, we'll change the management plans only from a standpoint of areas that are identified as asbestos containing will either be corrected because they are no longer asbestos containing based on sample results, or it's been abated. So that's the summer abatement package. And then I guess I can move into a little indoor air quality unless people have questions or you want to pause for something.
Just one question back to the summer abatement work. As I recall, there's the next 6-month inspection for the asbestos containing building materials is set for July. So that'll be concurrent with the abatement work. So is that inspection or assessment hindered at all due to this abatement work, or is it more of just a surveillance walkthrough type activity that can just proceed as planned?
Yeah, definitely the latter, Rich. It's just going to proceed as planned in areas that are obviously under active abatement. Carl won't be able to enter those to inspect it, but we'll have clearance and a report that says it's gone. So, you know, outside of those particular areas, it's not going to be much.
And then from your plan updates, is the only one being updated right now the Northeast plan, or are there?
Correct. Well, until the abatements are done, then they'll all be updated to reflect those.
The work in the summer.
The work in the summer. Correct.
Okay, but there's no other active pending updates for any other buildings.
Yes and no. Yes, there's always going to be this continuous review of materials. I think until we can go through a full reinspection with us, with our firm, I think we're going to continuously have these kind of little spot things. What's the school, Carl and Paul, we did the plaster sampling on? Willard. So there was a roof leak at Willard, I don't know, during that bad thunderstorm a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
right?
the real bad windstorm, yeah.
Windstorm damages the roof. That essentially then damages the top floor plaster, which was identified as asbestos containing. Rather than just go in there and treat it as asbestos, I looked at the sample results. They were never point counted samples. There were no positive samples collected from the top floor previously. So it was very Northeast-like. We went in, took a set of samples across the 3 wings of the top floor of Willard and identified no samples greater than 1%. So essentially took the top floor as asbestos containing plaster out of the mix. It is not an AHERA regulated material. Do I have confidence that the first and basement will also test negative? Of course I do. I would imagine it's a homogeneous material, but the inspector, in this case, Mike, decided that they were all going to be treated separately, consistent with what we did with Northeast. So we have yet to sample the first floor and basement plasters, but I can tell you that, you know, the work that had to have been done could be done safely with non-licensed professionals, and that is not AHERA containing. We'll continue to run into those kind of things until we do re-inspections, I think. I think we're gonna, there's things I just don't like the way that it was done before. I'm not saying it was done wrong, but there are, as you know, a little bit of subjectivity in an inspector's role of what is homogeneous. And then there are at least 2 methods of sampling. The polarized light microscopy, the PLM method, and then a point count method, which is more refined. It gives you a more precise number. So in some cases, there were just assumptions made that don't need to be made. For $10 worth of sampling, we don't have to assume mastics are positive. We can test them. And again, in the grand scheme of things, if the the area isn't being renovated, what's the big deal, you could say, if you assume the mastic, the glue underneath the tile. The problem is when it pops, or if there's damage, or if you have to renovate that, you guys are treating that as an asbestos event when it may not need to be an asbestos event. So for a couple of bucks in taking a bulk sample, you have the certainty of knowing the end result. So I think you're going to end up with, that's a very long answer, Rich, to your very short question. I apologize, but
one of the things that kind of jumped at me in finding those 1988 documents was that when we looked at Willard's, Rocco, if you remember, it did not identify the plaster as being asbestos-containing materials in 1988. Whereas then in 2016, it was identified as asbestos. And I can't find the test that showed that. I don't know if that became an assumption in 2016, but in the original, management plans and inspections in '88, it did not identify it as ACM.
Correct. And I think, just to clarify, it didn't identify it as non-ACM either. It was
correct.
absent with regard to whether or not plaster was even present. It
Right.
wasn't even identified as a suspect material.
Right.
And we know it was there. I mean, you didn't put the plaster in 2016.
Yeah. Right.
So just a simple answer looking for here. All the other plans except for Northeast are in place and adequate as of today.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
Thank you.
So Rocco, when all of this is done by the end of the summer, we've done the summer plans, we've got the management plans up, we could be as confident as possible that no more asbestos related incidents are going to blow up in a similar manner as this last one. We can move forward with confidence.
That's a tricky question. Again, I think I'll be a lot more confident when we have done the re-inspections, when we're certain that all of the re-inspections are done. So right now we're working on a management plan for pick a school, Charles Sumner, that is a hodgepodge of 20 years of people having their hands in that plan. Some back in 1988 may have been sampled again in 2012, we don't know, may have been sampled again in 2016, we don't know. We have 2019 that was done by Guzik. So am I confident that we know exactly? I'm sure we know anything that is asbestos is identified. There may be things identified as asbestos, kind of the false positive, that are not asbestos.
That's not a problem. I'm just hoping that we can hope that there's no false negatives that are going to put us in a similar situation with any of our schools with Northeast. But after this last what seems like eternity, we're not suddenly going to have to close a school or do anything like that. I can tick that one off my neuroses and put a different one in.
You can, yes. Yes.
Thanks, Rocco.
Okay, so let me move on to indoor air quality, and I promise it's only like 8 or so slides, but I tried to, I know you gave me an assignment of give us a little background on mold and moisture issues. So I kind of start at the broad indoor air quality issue, and then we'll drill down to very specific mold stuff. Again, at a kind of a global level. So the problem is a couple-fold. We know that an unhealthy indoor air quality environment affects performance of students. We know that's well studied empirically. A host of, you can read in the bullets, from attendance to exacerbation of pre-existing conditions such as asthma. And again, this list comes from a variety of sources, including the EPA, but it certainly could be ripped from the headlines of the Scranton Times for the last 3 months. Strained relationships within the school, community trust, deterioration, increased potential for closings and relocations. I mean, this is us as a district. So clearly, you don't need me to convince you that poor indoor air quality can create problems for the district. That's well known. The symptoms associated with poor indoor air quality, and I'll drill down to mold in a minute, but they're kind of the, that allergenic response type of issues, particularly, again, with sensitive population, those with underlying respiratory disease, suppressed immune systems, can all be negatively affected kind of adversely as part of the process. And again, the symptomology and signs, indoor air quality, do not necessarily, we're not necessarily talking about the carcinogens and those long-term problems. We're talking about a short, acute, chronic type of problems that occur on a regular basis. Sources that we will look at, obviously mold and bioaerosols, yeast, fungi, those type of things, pollens, those are kind of the focus of today, but there are a host of other source issues that we'll run into that would be defined as indoor air quality: carbon monoxide, combustion products from idling vehicles outside, volatile organic compounds from cleaners or maintenance chemicals. We obviously know about asbestos, tobacco smoke. That doesn't even account for vapes and a whole new species of secondary effects from those type of products. Mercury, again, heavy metals, pesticides applied inside and outside, radon. There's a host of sources of these things that we need to be cognizant of. The key drivers of these are identified here below. And again, it's easy for me to say, quality HVAC. Just look at the time and energy and money that we've invested in one system in one of your schools in Northeast. So quality HVAC is easier said than done, but they are the lungs of the building, and they are responsible, those systems, for moving out pollutants and bringing in clean filtered air. Control of moisture, I'll talk about integrated pest management. Your IPM program is your kind of pesticides, fungicides, either for animals, for plants, those kind of things. Effective cleaning and maintenance, smart selection of materials, so that as we reinstall product, we're using low VOC paints, we're using no formaldehyde flooring, et cetera, et cetera. Aggressive source control, those things that we touched on earlier that create the problem, and then energy management, you'll, I guess, talk about when we get to the Armstrong School area, is kind of a perfect example of how that created a source problem for us. Some basics on mold. Mold is a fungus. There are thousands of species of molds, and that kind of helps us, as you'll learn when we go to identifying if it's a problem or not. They're microscopic in size, and while we may see the outgrowth of mold visibly, that is an amalgamation of of millions of individual spores. And it is they're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. So we're never going to get to a mold-free environment. That's a fallacy. What we're trying to do is prevent conditions that allow mold to proliferate, because this can become airborne. These spores, they will remain airborne for extended periods of time, days, if not longer. And it is the inhalation of those that can cause that allergenic style response. I mean, we're all familiar with hay fever, or how pollen affects certain people and the type of symptomology. Well, mold spores can do the same thing. You can see they're little tiny tennis balls, and whether they're alive or dead, they can create that same kind of response in your body. Usually upper respiratory stuff, sneezy, coughy, itchy eyes, discomfort, cough, etc. So what we try to do is control their growth. And what do they need to grow? Something organic to grow on: paper, drywall, fabrics, those type of things, which are very hard to control, to prevent us from having drywall, right? We need that. This is not like a deli counter or a surgical wing where we're in a school. Temperatures, and unfortunately the temperatures that are comfortable for people are comfortable for molds to grow, so we can't excessively heat or cool the place. Moisture, which is the key thing we're going to talk about, and then time. When we have those things present, we will have mold proliferation. So if I look at this list, the thing that we can control the easiest is moisture. And it is critical for maintaining indoor air quality and the prevention of mold proliferation. So we go through a 4-step process. It's a cycle. We start by looking, and the looking can happen by anybody. Doesn't just have to be Courtyard or an environmental engineer. It should be your maintenance staff. It should be your custodial staff. It should be your teaching staff. Aides, paraprofessionals can all be trained to be assessors and look for those kind of conditions. When we find them, we want to find the source, right? This is always related to water. So if we're trying to control moisture, to identify the source of that is critical. Is it a leaking pipe? Is it a poor roof drain? Is it water infiltration through the foundation? Is it high humidity because of HVAC systems? We have to identify the moisture or water source that is creating that dampness to allowing the mold to grow. Once we have the mold, we obviously repair the water issue or moisture issue. We can remediate. I'll talk about how we clean this up. And then we repeat that process through regular inspection. So it isn't complicated stuff. It's just kind of an awareness that, oh boy, I didn't realize that could be a problem. And once folks are made aware of that, you can kind of nip this early in the process, and you will never have excessive mold proliferation events. When we do an indoor air quality assessment, we go through 3 scopes of work. And these are taken right from, one of our reports. The 3 things that we typically will do as part of an indoor air quality assessment is kind of the visual, right? What do we see? What do we smell? What's the story? Do we see staining? Do we see damage? Do we see ponding water? Does it get better during certain times? Does it get worse? So it starts with the sensory, and that is the most critical piece of the whole thing, is a good solid visual assessment. We know the conditions that should exist, and when we see things that are different from that, then that causes us to drill deeper. The second part is, what are the conditions? Environmental parameters that, again, would create a condition that would allow this stuff to grow. So that includes, again, simple readings, temperature, humidity, moisture content of building components, just real time. I can touch a wall unit and tell what the moisture content is. What is the carbon dioxide level? Which we can measure as an indicator of how much fresh air is in the classroom. And is it excessive or low? Is the general particulate level in the room? And again, these are real time. Those of you that have seen us do this, walk around with a couple of handheld meters to capture this information. So part one of the story is what do we see and smell? Part two is what are the conditions like in the area? And then part three is what do the air samples tell us? And kind of counterintuitive, it's the least important of all three of those areas. And that's because in the industrial hygiene world, the assessment of mold in air is an imperfect science. Remember before I told you, these are ubiquitous. They're everywhere, these spores. So it very rarely, if ever, will we get a perfectly clean sample. That just doesn't exist. Consequently, there is no permissible exposure level. There's no magic threshold by which if you breathe less than certain number of spores per cubic centimeter, you're going to be fine. There is no magic number. Everybody is affected in a different way and at a different level. So what we're essentially doing when we do air sampling is we take very large amounts of air over short amounts of time, and we I'm going to oversimplify this, slam that air against something that looks like a piece of Scotch tape. The spores get impacted on that tape. It gets sent off to a lab where it's stained and examined under a microscope, and they count the spores. Back to my previous slide, you can see there's thousands of spores. So they will count the spores and the species and tell us, all right, well, here's what your outdoor air looks like, because we collect those samples simultaneously. Here's what your indoor samples look like. And if they're similar, we say that that passes. That's realistically, it's a comparative analysis. So the question of do I have an indoor air quality problem, do I have a mold problem, is really what do we see in these three boxes? Do we smell something? And if so, take care of it. Do we see visible mold? If so, you don't need me to do air sampling. I can tell you got a problem. You shouldn't have visible mold growing in your classrooms. Consequently, if we don't see or smell anything, there's nothing unusual, but the humidity is off the charts high, I'm going to tell you stop right there and do something about it, because I know if you don't, you're going to have a problem later on. So again, first one checks, second one checks, then the last one is almost like a confirmation of what we already know. If we don't smell or see anything, if the conditions are dry, we shouldn't get much in the way of an air sampling anomaly. But do they happen? Again, it's a 5-minute snapshot of what's going on compared to the outside. If it's a rainy day, you may not get a lot of spores outside. If it's a dry day, you may get too many spores. So it's an imperfect science if we just rely on the air sampling. It's, again, the most insignificant of those three elements. What do we do to prevent that? Kind of commonsensical things, right? Fix leaks, anything in the building envelope that's allowing moisture. Watch for condensation. Prevent condensation through controlling temperatures. Look in HVAC systems. Keep drip pans where condensation is designed to collect and be discharged from the building. You've seen an air conditioner run and that drip that happens. That's pulling moisture out of the air. It's condensating on a coil. It's dripping into a pan. There's a pipe that sends it outside. Well, if that pipe is blocked, if it's a bad design, you can end up with accumulations and mold growth and a host of other things, including Legionella, inside of your HVAC systems. Vent appliances that generate moisture. Dryers are a good example of that. The biggest one, maintain humidities. Any less than 30%, people will start to complain because it's dry and it's uncomfortable. Any more, then 60%, and you'll start to have mold growing on things that it shouldn't grow on. So humidity control is key to indoor air quality. Change your filters, look at your systems, monitor them, inspect them. And then from an outside standpoint, occasionally, we can improve the situation through grading and control of moisture away from the building. Make sure the roof leaders that drain are directed out as far away from the building as we can practically get. Make sure building slopes away from the building so we're not taking on water. Drains are cleaned and debris is clear so that standing water doesn't exist. Last two slides. So what do we do if we find it? The guidelines here come from the New York City, the Department of Public Health and Mental Hygiene. They are the gold standard for mold remediation, and they basically classify 5 different areas or criteria, and it's based on the size of the exposure and where it is. So the first 3 deal with general building envelope, small, medium, and large. Small meaning less than 10 square feet, ceiling tile, one area of a wall, piece of a carpet, that kind of thing. A medium is 10 to 100 square feet, part of a room, that kind of thing. And then large areas are where it's extensive and pervasive through the whole structure. Likewise, there are 2 classifications for the HVAC system, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system, because of, again, the ability to contaminate, if you will, or spread that contamination throughout the building, basically small and large designations. So what does the New York City guidelines tell us? Is that through small and medium isolated areas and small areas in HVAC systems, the regular building maintenance staff should be able to address those concerns. And that's, through training for Carl's guys and the maintenance staff. You can clean and control mold. You do it in your home on a regular basis anyway. As long as it's done properly, this is easy to control through your regular building staff. N95 mask, filtering face piece like we're seeing with COVID, gloves, eye protection, nothing crazy required. Remove people from the immediate area. You don't have to evacuate the whole building because you have a few square feet of mold, in a bathroom. Use dust minimizing techniques. We're not going in with compressed air and things that are going to generate those spores to be spread all over the place. Sealed bags, wet wipes. It's not necessarily Clorox and some fancy, sporicide is not necessary in most instances. It's simple detergent. It's just cleaning, kind of same things we're talking about with COVID. Wash your hands with soap and water. You don't need any crazy, spread Clorox everywhere. That's more dangerous than the value. But a HEPA vacuum is critical. Normal shop vac, the pore size is just so big that those spores will blow everywhere. So using a HEPA, which is a high efficiency particulate air vacuum, a filter that's got a pore size small enough to capture those is critical. And if you get into a kind of a medium area, an entire part of a room or a big area floor, sealing the area off so that you're minimizing the spread of any spores. If you're going to roll up a carpet in a room that's got mold growth, that would be kind of classified as that medium level. We would suggest, cover the HVAC system, cover the door with poly. And again, we did see this on last summer's abatement project at Armstrong, where that was, done to kind of critical barriers so that any spores generated there were not dispersed throughout the building. So again, regular stuff, not anything special, no special licenses, no special accreditations or anything along those lines. Because I know in about 3 weeks, Jenny will be asking for my PowerPoint, and it'll get posted someplace. I wanted to give you some reference material so you can see where we get this information from. Again, in Pennsylvania, there is no regulation for mold. There's no national regulation for mold. There's a bunch of guidelines and some preventative maintenance things, but this is not regulated to the extent that things like lead or asbestos are regulated in this country. Richard, I hope that was sufficient and kind of answers your questions. If you have something else, I'm happy to answer it, but that's kind of my spiel.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. As you wrapped up there, it answered my first question that there aren't any applicable standards or regulations. And as you said, I think you said there's a bunch of guidelines out there.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any of these guidelines or best practices that are implemented in the school district here? Or is it kind of a firefighting type activity?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking the group, I guess.
Oh, okay, yeah, because
Yeah.
I don't know you guys well enough, I think, yet to know the answer to that.
I'll speak to that. You know, it's been a firefight since we've kind of taken over here, and I think that we're at the point that we're finally able to maybe start moving into more of a proactive stance instead of a reactive stance. And it's taken us obviously a while to get here, but you know, working with Courtyard, I think has been extremely beneficial for our district just in that mindset. I think we're much more, our staff is much more active looking for issues than they had been in the past. And a lot of our conversations that Carl and I and some of our maintenance staff have with Rocco and Dr. Courtyard are stemming about what does this look like months down the road? What do we need to do to get to that next level to avoid, you know, the emergencies popping up? So I think right now, in regards to that, I think we're right at the point that it's a critical moment in that we're making that transition to be more proactive.
Yeah, and I guess along those lines, obviously, if you could be more proactive, identify issues earlier, it would be less of a financial burden to resolve them moving forward, right? So the money spent well now could save you a lot of dollars in the long run, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, preventative maintenance goes a long way. And really, there was no preventative maintenance schedule anywhere within this operations department for many, many years. And that's a little embarrassing to say out loud, but it's the truth. We also are implementing a work order and preventative maintenance system through Dude Solutions that, you know, is going to hold people accountable for making sure that those items are done. They're done in a timely manner. And that's going to be critical for us as a district to move forward. You know, I getting the asbestos issues behind us is we can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel with that one, is critical. And then it's going to allow, you know, us, and especially Carl as a supervisor of what goes on daily, to really get our focus on what needs to be done to keep our schools in good position going forward.
That's correct, Paul. And if I could add to that, as we go through our summer cleaning months here, that's the big part of.
Oh.
Yep, we lost Carl there.
Yeah, it's a big part of something.
Hello.
Hey, you're there.
Okay. Paul, if I could add to that, you're absolutely right. As we go through our summer cleaning program over the summer months when the school is empty, a big part of that program as well is not just to clean, but to identify areas of concern. So if we see water gathering somewhere, or if we see a leak, or we see some kind of growth, we immediately identify it and taking care of it before it turns into a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
So we are taking a lot of precautions and observing a lot of things that we have never done And I agree, this whole environmental thing has definitely gone to a new level. And I think it's going to get even better as we go forward and get more familiar with everything.
Do we do any air quality tests now, like for radon or carbon dioxide or anything like that?
I mean, a lot of that has been done as needed. I mean, I couldn't.
So there's nothing periodic. That's
No.
fine. I was just curious.
No, Rocco, can you speak to that?
Yeah, certainly. I'm not aware of any ongoing, and that would be atypical to do, without any kind of prompt. I would not expect there to be carbon monoxide issues or carbon dioxide issues. So they have some routine testing, may just waste some money for you. It'd be much better to have the programs that Carl identified in place, so that there's training and awareness of the staff. There's rapid response to moisture issues, but it's not just moisture issues. You may have mercury thermostats someplace, and you have a mercury thermostat and nobody knows what it is, and a kid knocks it off the wall, and next thing you know, you're evacuating a building. I mean, there's literally thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars tied up in mercury abatements and remediations because somebody just wasn't aware of, oh, that little silver vial inside of that is mercury. So much better money spent is not in just collecting air sampling data outside of a problem. It's in developing those preventative maintenance skills and response actions early in the process. That helps everybody across the board.
If I may, I'd like to just add this one issue that we learned along the way. Generally in the summer, we in our district used to clean carpets, particularly in music rooms. That was part of our summer maintenance, to have it ready for when the students return. One of the problems with doing that in the summer is you don't have good airflow, because you don't have, what they would do is clean the carpets, close the doors, and then of course mold would grow. So we changed our carpet cleaning to over the holiday breaks in November and December, when the heat is on in the building, and it would help with the better airflow. So I'm not sure what we do in Scranton on an annual basis with carpet, but it is something to be aware of, because that's just adding more moisture into areas, and without good airflow, and because we don't have air conditioning in most of our buildings, it creates it creates an environment for mold to grow. So just wanted to add that from experience.
Yeah, and Dr. Finan, absolutely concur. We see it every summer, the same exact. I'll tell you the other issue we've seen, and we have seen it in your district as well, but I'll bet you I did half a dozen school events last August, all related to these energy conservation programs.
Yes.
Where the schools are buttoned up tight. Everybody's trying to save a few bucks by increasing temperatures over the summer. And what that does is your HVAC system, your air conditioner, pulls moisture out of the air. That's how it works. So if your temperatures go up, your humidities go up, and next thing you know, teachers come back in August, then there's mold growing all over everything. So please monitor your humidities this summer. And I know there's you guys are looking for money, and it's going to be real tempting to say we can save $70,000 by increasing the temperature to 85 degrees, over this period of time. The downside is you're going to spend $100,000 on remediation costs in August 15th trying to get schools ready.
Thank you, Rocco. That's exactly it. Those energy conservation systems are something to be very cautious with.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hello. I would like to add a little bit here, Mr. Naroda, classroom teacher. Mr. Rocco, that was very impressive. That was a really good
Thank you.
presentation. And I got to say, I feel as a teacher, you guys seem to have a good handle on this. Good job.
Thank you. What school do you work in?
Scranton High School, shop
Oh, okay.
teacher.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Mr. Doherty, were you going to brief us on what's going on up at Armstrong at all?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. As we talked about, I think at our last meeting, each of the last 2 summers, and this is a good segue right from what Rocco said, we had done, I guess, 2 to 3 years ago, the energy savings project was at Armstrong. And since that point, in both the last 2 summers, we've had significant mold growth at Armstrong in multiple classrooms that they remediated, but did not necessarily find a solution. And we're not going to walk that same road. The school board did appoint an engineer of record at the last meeting within the last month, which is GPI Greenman Peterson. And as soon as they were appointed, we did get them up on the site up at Armstrong to take a look at exactly what's going on. The HVAC system there, it's original to the building, so it's almost, it's 50 plus years old. And basically there's a huge moisture issue, huge. When they did the energy savings project, the water never leaves the units. It was just, and granted, I'm not an HVAC technician, but that's not good. And, we would have excessive humidity, upwards of 90% humidity in that building throughout the summer. Rocco was on site there last year. He could attest to how ridiculous it was, the conditions in that building. But GPI did do a walkthrough, and they did put together a proposal for us to do schematic design for a new HVAC system, to develop the construction documents, to assist us with the bidding and the negotiations, and then to oversee the construction process. And the school board did approve that proposal at the last meeting. So we are moving ahead with a permanent solution at Armstrong. I mean, that's in my mind, that's real good news. But so hopefully we won't be walking this same road in that building again. Hopefully, we're hopeful that they'll have a new HVAC system very shortly that'll address, that'll take care of all these concerns.
And you plan to have that taken care of this summer, right?
Yes, I mean, the proposal was done, was approved. So now they are preparing the schematic design of the project, and then it'll be going out for bid. The timeline on completion, obviously, I don't know, but I mean, the school will reopen on time.
Paul, as I recall, I don't know, the school is 25 or 30 years old, maybe?
No, it's more than that.
Is it more, maybe it was 25 years of life in an HVAC? I thought you guys had doubled the life out of your
Doubled
HVAC.
it. Yeah, they
right?
said that you should have gotten about 30 years out of the HVAC, and we've almost doubled it.
Okay.
I think it's close to 50, actually, believe it or not.
The building or the HVAC?
No, the HVAC. So,
Oh.
yeah, we did get our money's worth, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I believe the lifespan was 25 years, but in reality, they're 50 years old. That's correct.
Mhm.
Paul, do we have any other schools with significant mold issues?
Not that I'm aware of. At a meeting one time, a teacher from Scranton High said that there's a lot of moisture in their room every spring. So you know, without actually seeing it and getting in there when that's occurring, I don't know how to address that when it's not occurring. So we're going to be taking a look at our buildings, as you know, especially our air conditioned buildings, as the spring ramps up, and you know, we'll have Rocco and the other guys from Courtyard in there when we're looking at this, obviously, but not that I'm aware of. I mean, we've had isolated incidents, but nothing to the level of what we've seen at Armstrong each of the last 2 summers.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah, we've never seen anything like that before.
Paul or Carl, do you guys have the ability? I know this system was in place at Armstrong, but I don't know how prolific it is through the district. Do you have the ability to remotely track humidities, like from a central area? Can you set parameters and say, you know, send me a text message when the humidity in one building goes above 60% or 65%? Do you have that kind of control?
No, there are no humidity checks.
No. Okay.
No, that would be ideal.
Yeah, those systems exist, but
True.
Aren't there some handheld devices that you can use?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we use. That's
Yeah.
what we use.
I know usually houses around the shore have those to check the humidity and when they're not occupied. So maybe that's something we could look at, you know, for Carl to be able to utilize in some of the areas. Particularly,
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not, you don't need it all the time, but during the seasons when you need it, it would be wise to do it.
Yeah, when the first time I walked into Armstrong last summer, I think it was mid-July, I walked in with the gentleman from damage control, and he had one of those devices, doctor, and the room we walked into was 92% humidity. It was like a thunderstorm. Yeah, it would be very beneficial at least to have a couple of those.
That would be a great tool to have. Absolutely.
And they're inexpensive too, Carl. I would give you a recommendation on, you know, temp, humidity, CO2 meter that's, I don't know, $100, $80, something like that. They're relatively
that would be great. That would be a handy tool going into this season, no doubt.
I think that would be a good thing to do right now, so we have it available for the summer. So if Rocco, you could help us.
Yeah, I can give you a recommendation, and I'll train you on it, you know, exactly, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
The last thing I had on the agenda was an attempt at looking at a roadmap for this task force. So I did draft a slide that I could present to the group here, perhaps. Do you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Is it a slide?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
So, excuse me? Do you see
No, I've just got to get it. I can't.
Okay, so the
No,
thought,
I'm not seeing you.
everyone else see it?
No,
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm good.
Guess I'll try to describe it for everyone. So the thought process was as I develop a roadmap to kind of guide the task force here, and from my perspective, and I'm open to any suggestions here, was to try to align the operations of the school district, the relevant operations with respect to the environmental things, to the engagement that the task force is looking at. For example, the abatement work for the asbestos at Northeast, tie in the HERA management plans. I was under the impression that we were going through and reviewing all the plans per today. I understand now that it's just the Northeast plan that's being actively updating. But for example, we'd have the 6-month surveillance test intervals, which could tie into being reviewed as part of the task force. The summer asbestos work, which we reviewed today, as well, the Armstrong HVAC. That's about as much visibility as I have. We talked about air quality testing today, and again, it's my understanding that might not be applicable as there's no routine or periodic air quality testing. It's kind of pop-up issues that get addressed there. Do we perhaps water testing, if there's anything that we do there periodically, we could consider that?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
glad, Mr. Colley, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm glad you just brought that up because we actually do have an update on that. Rocco and I have been working on addressing some of the lead issues that came up earlier this year that kind of got put on the, we shut off all the sinks and fountains that were affected, but now we're going back to get a solution. Rocco, can you just update the group as to what we were doing?
Yeah, and I'll make it quick. Rich, I love this. This is right up my alley, of course. So I'm on board with your roadmap. But I maybe even for the next meeting, I can do. I'll promise I'll make it brief, much smaller than the last one. But there have been significant changes in schools in Pennsylvania in regard to drinking water standards for lead. So there is now an annual requirement for the district to test drinking water for lead. This is an outgrowth of Flint and Newark and a whole lot of, it's a significant contributor to childhood elevated lead levels, which many of you are aware is, got its own set of host of toxic cognitive behavioral, it's pervasive. So we right now have just picked up the ball from the previous consultant who had identified, I think it was 38.
38.
48? No, 38.
38.
38. 38 distal sources that were elevated, and that there's a specific limit, 15 parts per billion. We've gone back through those 38 and retested them to kind of see where you're at for those. And we didn't get the results back as we just took them last week. But I guess, Rich, for your area, absolutely, yes, there's an annual. And then there's, kind of the remediation for those. And again, 90% of the time, the fix is you don't have an incoming water problem. Incoming water is city water. It's very low in lead. But what happens is over the years, because of fixtures and solder that is used, if that water sits, it can leach the lead out. And part of the testing protocol is you have to take what's called a first draw sample. So if that water sits there, it leaches lead. You take a first draw. A kid could drink that every day. That could be his routine. He walks into the school and takes a drink out of the water fountain. He could receive that elevated lead level. So that's why we test the way we do. And again, right now the fix is primarily replace the fixture, retest, but there are a host of other things you can do, including flushing programs, filters, or in what has happened, I think it's in Prescott, is the only area we didn't retest because they've essentially capped all the lines. You've cut and capped all those lines. So there's no sense of bringing a plumber in today to do that. There's just excess expense. But I'm way down in the weeds. Probably good for us to have a little lead and drinking water discussion next month or next.
Yeah, but I'm glad that we're kind of back on that and addressing those 38. Because obviously it is a short-term solution, just turning them all off. But that's not what we want for the long term. We want to actually identify, is it the fixture? Can we change the fixture and put that back into service? And that's the process we started this past week. But typically our water testing happens every December in between Christmas and New Year's. That's when we've been doing it annually.
Okay, so that's great. We'll get that on the agenda for next month with the water testing. Again, I think the air quality testing aspects are kind of overcome by today's meeting. Again, there's no routine activity there. then from the engagement side, obviously it's kind of a monitor and review type, educate type perspective. But we talked about mold. I assume we'll monitor the progress up at Armstrong through the summer. As far as lead, we could start talking about that. Sounds like that'll be in the, like you said, December, probably for this group, the January report or status on that would be appropriate. One thing I threw up here as a proposed activity, it doesn't necessarily need to be next month, but I can only imagine if the schools must be planning some sort of provisions to deal with the COVID-19 situation. And is that appropriate for this forum? Any sort of deep cleaning plans or anything like that? Is that something that the group would be interested in pursuing?
I mean, that's certainly something I could provide updates on because we're having lots and lots of those conversations right now. I mean, I'm just assuming that we're going to be sanitizing every building every day. There are no guidelines from PDE about what to expect. I mean, there's not even any guidelines specifically what school is going to look like in the fall. A lot of that is going to hinge on, are they going to bring the kids back full days? Are they going to do alternate days? Are they going to do half days? Because that's really going to determine how I think that we're going to have to sanitize these buildings every day. But I think it's safe to say that the amount of sanitizing is going to have to be increased dramatically. Carl Puglisi did a lot of research that, you know, we do have a sanitizing machine in our district, but obviously we're going to need a lot more of them. And he did some research, and that's one of the purchases that we're looking at making through the operations department to make sure that our schools each have one of these sanitizing spray machines that we could get in and make sure that all of our high touch areas, all of our desks are done each day. But yeah, I mean, yeah, we could certainly keep that on, you know, this discussion going within this task force, because I think that's certainly environmental in nature. But we're really going to need some guidance from PDE as to exactly how that's going to look.
Is there any other industrial type hygiene guidance that's out there? I'm not sure if it's OSHA or anything along those lines as far as sanitizing.
Sure, yeah, sure. There's absolutely protocol in existence. I think Paul's point was you guys just don't know what the frequency, but I think absolutely, if you said we're open in school in a week, there's a specification for what cleaning looks like, dwell times, chemicals. Absolutely, yes. Now, to do that now wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, but certainly once you have kids regularly in the building, absolutely.
Right. So would it make sense to talk about it in the next couple months, or for this group, or is it something just to put on the back burner?
You certainly could keep it on for something over the summer, because I think by then you'll start to firm up plans, you would imagine, right, Paul? I mean, at some point you got to give parents what is school going to look like? Somebody's going to have to come back with that.
Yeah, Rocco, I can speak to that. There's a lot of task force in the background at the state level, at the regional level, local level. So a lot will be coming out over the next, I mean, we're waiting for a lot of guidance right now from PDE on exactly what it is that school is going to look like. And that changes daily. I mean, we received one report from PDE, then we just received another report from PDE. So things, yes, that will be coming out. And there's a lot of planning that will be happening in the background. Once we figure out what school will look like, then we will put all of that into place. But, you know, I think it's important to note that our maintenance is back to work full time, and they are cleaning as we speak, the building, sanitizing the buildings, doing all of that. So we will keep everybody informed as we continue to get more information.
That's correct. Every day, the buildings are being cleaned and sanitized. We even brought in a couple of additional products this year. One product that we changed was our wax. We're now going to use a wax called Clarion 25, and it has Microban in it. It's a germ-fighting material. So that's something in addition and related to COVID-19 that we're taking steps of precaution to, try to better what we do over the summer. So everything is being cleaned on a daily basis. Everything school ended early this year. It kind of gave us an opportunity maintenance-wise to take a little better look at what we're doing, take more time, do a more thorough cleaning, and hopefully it'll all work. And again, like you said, once we know what school looks like, cleaning over a nightly basis will most certainly change. I'm sure there'll be more additional stuff to do. So we'll see how that looks and how it all shakes out going forward. But we are, like I said, we brought in different materials. We're cleaning on a daily basis. Every precaution is being taken. And I think we're on a great path.
My only recommendation would be, let's procure those machines. Let's get whatever you need to authorize to buy those machines. Let's buy them now, because the absolute drought of that sort of equipment is coming now. We spent $427 on 27 bottles of hand sanitizer for my son-in-law's work. I mean, if we can't, let's be proactive, because everyone and their mother's going to be out buying them as soon as possible.
Right.
Do you know how much do they cost, and do you need board authorization, and do we need to put something through specially?
Well, I mean, we looked at a couple different machines. The one machine was going to cost us upwards of about $80,000 to get one in every building. Another one was, I want to say $38,000, a backpack style, to get them in every building. So it's expensive, but it's going to be money well spent. I mean, we have to have them. So that's discussions that I'll be having with Mr. Laffey. In moving ahead with the purchase of those.
Yeah. Not to interfere, Paul. The quicker you get it to us, the quicker we can get you the machines.
Right.
We can get the authorization for spending. It's like the Wild West out there. I keep feeling like there are buffalo hunters out there hunting down my boxes of hand sanitizer.
Yeah. No, they would be a great tool to have in addition to everything else we have. It's kind of like, a necessity at this point going forward. Like, who the heck knows what all of this is going to look like a year from now? So things are changing, the world is changing, everything is changing. And I believe we're rolling with the changes, and there's a lot of great things happening. And I believe we're on top of it.
This is Missy. I apologize. It's 9:30. I have to get off. I think moving forward, Mr. Cobley, if we're going to discuss before I leave this meeting, I apologize, because our lives now are Zoom, as everybody knows, and so is everybody else's. Can we discuss a little bit about how this is going to continue? And I think, we're in a good spot right now. And as you can see, the majority of the questions, the director of operations, between our environmental experts and the director of operations, they can handle most of the questions that are being asked. And as we move forward, is there any way that we can kind of plan out, are we going to move these meetings? Is it going to continue on a monthly basis? Is it going to be quarterly? And then, I don't feel that it's necessary that I'm on every call, or as long as Paul is there representing. Can we just talk a little bit about that? And I honestly have 5 minutes before I have to take another phone call.
Sure. I guess my personal opinion is to the latter question. I don't think you need to be on the call, and some of the other administrators. Like you said, I think Paul and the experts are handling it very well. And I would be open to moving it to quarterly as well, as long as there's not some sort of emerging issue that occurs like the Northeast situation.
I agree, and that's hopefully all of what we're doing right now will eliminate all of that. Although we do have surprises that we're still finding, but as we continue to clean up the district, overall, not just in this area. We do not want any more of these surprises. So hopefully we're doing our job to make sure that these surprises do not happen. Obviously we can't control COVID, but things that we can control, we need to clean up. So I appreciate that, all that you're doing and the organization that you have put into this task force. I do. And I'm, if there's an agenda item that I would need to be on for, I certainly would get on. But quarterly, I think once I think we're in pretty good shape, and I think quarterly would work, if everybody's in agreement.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess the trick is to time it when there's relevant information available, like the asbestos surveillance test, the lead tests, things along those lines.
Right. Right. And we know 6 months, we know the reassessments are 6 months. We know water testing is in December, and maybe plotting out exactly when those items are happening and then planning around. I don't know, just a suggestion.
No, just at a glance, it looks like maybe August, early February.
Yep.
Like two. So maybe on that kind of a 3-month interval.
Yeah,
That's great.
I think they're perfect dates because we should have the information back from the reassessments and the reevaluations and the lead. We should have that all come early February.
So that'd be what, February, May, August, and November would be quarterly then.
Yeah, I think, that obviously that works with, kind of the May happens right as the summer starts, and maintenance is going to start, operations is going to start their summer work. August is right before the kids come back. So it seems the timing helps to work with the cycle of occupancy as well.
And would mid-month or early month be?
Doesn't matter to me.
Would one be better than the other?
The only thing I'm going to suggest, whenever you choose to do that is okay. But once we're back to school, I just know that if I'm on the call, 8 o'clock, my phone is going crazy because school has started at that time. So, and I'm sure, Paul can speak to that too. So normally the beginning of the morning is very chaotic for us with bus accidents and kids not coming to school and taking issues from principals. So I'm just speaking for myself. So, if I'm to be on the call, it's better for me to get into my office and have a little bit of a later, like a 10 o'clock call. But again, I'm just speaking from me, who I may not be on every call. That's all that's the only input. As far as the day, Mondays are usually a little bit crazier. Wednesdays, for whatever reason, calm down. Fridays are wild. So that's kind of a school district. Sum it up pretty quickly.
Okay.
Missy, do you feel that the middle of the month is good because of the school board meetings? Maybe action would have been taken at the beginning of the month, and if this committee dictates anything that the board needs to address, then we'd be heading toward a work session if this were in the middle of the month.
Yeah, like a second or third Wednesday of the month, whenever that is decided, I think would be perfect. And again, I'm speaking from me, and if it's, Paul, you should provide input on that, because you're primarily, while you hold this position, will be the person that will get on this call.
Right. I mean, I could make the time work. I realize that obviously you're dealing with the, other things besides this, and I'd be very comfortable with you not being involved in this. I think mid-month of February, mid-month of May would be ideal for just the reason Katie said, because if there's something then it needs to go to the work session, it would literally be like the next week or within 10 days. We'd be bringing that to the work session. But I mean, I could continue to make the 8 a.m. meeting work.
Okay. Yeah, that's hard for me with my phone, as that in the morning is blown up.
No doubt. Typically when there are operations or maintenance issues, that's starting at about 6:30, and they're dealt with between 6:30 and 7 in the morning when we're back. And but the secondary start of the day is I don't want to jinx myself, but it's typically smoother than the elementary start to the day. So I'd be very comfortable having this meeting at 8 a.m. if it continued.
Great.
Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I apologize. I need to get off and get on a phone call, but I truly want to thank everybody for the commitment to this, and I feel like we're headed in the right direction. And as everyone says, it takes a lot of people, and the outside perspective is great, and we will continue to needing that. And Rocco, I can't thank you enough. Your expertise and knowledge has guided us through probably my most difficult time in my life. And you asked me the other day if I'm scarred from this issue, and yes, I am. But we will move forward. So thank you, everybody. I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, Miss.
See you.
See you, Beth.
Okay.
All right, so-
Mr. Cobley,
Yes.
I have one suggestion.
Yeah.
And Paul, maybe you want to chime in on this.
Sure.
We're making a ton of progress. A lot's happening on a daily basis from an environmental perspective in the district. My concern is if we do quarterly meetings, could we maybe have a monthly update by email or something, just letting us know, what's going on environmentally, in that month?
For the entire district, Dan, or for?
Yeah, like, the stuff that we'd be covered, just, here's what we got accomplished this month, or here's what we're working on, or just something along the lines. My concern is when we have a quarterly meeting, is it going to turn out to be a marathon because there's so much to cover? If we just did updates along the way, maybe that would alleviate that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm open to that.
Paul, don't you think that the updates, the departmental updates that are coming to the work sessions could be provided to this committee?
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to that. Like next month, I'm not sure how many more updates, like a month from now, I would have, because we're going to be like into the summer abatement.
Right.
Like at that point. But I have no problem. I mean, passing out information as to what environmentally is going on with the operations department. Like that's not an issue at all.
Yeah, and that's just one person's suggestion. I mean, if the committee decides otherwise, that's fine with me as well.
That's fine. I mean, I'll provide information as often as people want it. It's just I could certainly see the advantage of doing that mid-August when we meet again, because I'm assuming that'll be the first of our quarterly ones. Because then that way we'll have the 6 month, the other 6 months we'll have the summer abatement projects will be done. We'll have hopefully a solution to the lead and the fixture issue. And we might even have more information, significantly more information about Armstrong, but even about other mold concerns. Just 30 days from now, I don't know how much I would have to share.
Yeah, and maybe that's a better plan, is just a month before we're scheduled to meet, or even 2 weeks before. That'll allow us to plan the meeting a little bit better, I would think.
Right. Agreed.
Okay. Thanks.
And as I'm as both secretary and operations chairperson at the board, if anything comes up that I think Ginny can help me set up a folder, or I can just send an email out to the task force. If anything up as secretary, Paul, you and I can do it. I blast to the committee, to the task force, but Ginny will have to set me up with a folder because I can't do that. But and then if there's anything that we feel everyone needs to know, get that information out straight away.
I have a quick question for the parent representatives. Are you using the school district email that we set you up with, Ms. Eric, Rick, and Paul?
I am not.
Oh.
This is Paul Medor. No, I
Yes.
have not. I have not logged into that yet.
Okay.
I want to, but I'm not able to parallel it with my phone and my computer, so it's annoying because I take most of my email on my phone.
Okay, so what
I'll
is
see
the
what I need
best?
to do to work it out.
Okay.
But my Gmail is my best. That's my
Okay.
best source for getting mail. But
All right.
I will go to the school district's page today and see if I can get into that again.
Okay. I know there's a couple emails addresses that I had, and I was trying to include all of them so we didn't miss anything, but
Okay.
Eric, are you using it at all?
Yeah, I logged in and I've been I generally check everything on my laptop and I can bounce between the two pretty easy. So
Okay, and Rick?
I just use.
Okay.
I have logged in. I do not
Okay.
check it very often, however.
Oh, okay. So what is your best email then? I'm sorry if I'm taking.
That's okay. The one that with the extension lmco.com is the best one.
Okay. Okay, got it. Thank you.
So, Dr. Finan,
Ro, I didn't hear you. Sorry.
it's okay.
What was your question?
Just you must have 1,000 things. Has anyone anything else to bring to the meeting?
I'm good, thank you. I'm fine. Whenever you schedule it, I'll do my best to be on. So I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so I think in conclusion here, we've agreed next meeting will be mid-August, and we'll maintain the 8 a.m. start time for now.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
And agenda topics, I guess, off the cuff would be hopefully a final update on Northeast, the 6-month surveillance of the asbestos, the update on Armstrong, and then
The summer abatement packages.
Yep. Summer abatement.
And hopefully some water testing updates.
Okay.
That sounds solid.
By that time, just for everyone's information, since we will be going back to school in September, it should be an overall look at every building and how we prepared them for school in September. By mid-August, we have to be ready.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
Yes, this is Paul Medor. I've asked this before, but based on what the doctor just said, I would like to know when are we actually going to get to walk around these schools and take a look? We spent a significant amount of time in meetings, and I understand that, but it was my understanding coming into this that we're going to spend time in the buildings, and it doesn't seem like that's happening. And I understand, the COVID stuff and the schools are out, but it seems to me that there's a valuable period of time that we're not being allowed to utilize. And, having run industrial applications and facilities, an extra set of eyes has never hurt me. And I would just like to see these buildings. I mean, at least a tour, just access. I don't really need anyone to hold my hand, but I think we're doing great things with the meeting, and it just seems like we could do a little bit of on-site stuff. And I guess that's my 2 cents once again.
I'd be happy to take you on site. We just have to watch how many people we're putting in a building. Right now, we're stuck with 10 or less people in a building on a daily basis, or simultaneously 10 people. If I'm hoping to move into yellow phase with the governor's plan, so we could get at least 25 people in a building simultaneously, it seems, it's a little extreme to me, because we have some buildings that are almost 300,000 square feet and we can't bring in more than 10 people at a time. But Mr. Medor, I mean, if it's, depending on how many people want to do it, I'd gladly, go with you to all the buildings.
I would love to do that. And, I have a fairly open schedule.
Okay. All right. Is there anybody else that wants? Because I just have to make sure that when we're going into the buildings again, that we're not over 10.
Yeah, my schedule's pretty open as well. I'm Tuesday through Friday. I don't work, so.
Okay.
you could let me know, and I'd be more than happy to come in, because I've had a few parents come up to me and be like, "Hey, what's going on with everything?" And I'm like, "Well, we have a meeting." And I give them the information, and they're happy with everything that's going on, but they're like, "Have you seen it?" I'm like, "Well, no, we're not allowed to because of the restrictions with everything." So
Right.
Yeah, I'd be
Right.
interested in touring as well.
Okay. I mean, I have no problem setting that up. I mean, when we get there, I'll, if it's over 10, I'll just move maintenance staff outside. I mean, as silly as that sounds, but, we could certainly arrange that. I just would not be able to accommodate the whole committee simultaneously.
Great. I also have, I think, a question for Rocco. I don't know, but it's been my experience with ventilation systems in particular that there is the ability to install, in-use testing for a variety of contaminants. And we're talking about Armstrong's HVAC is going to have to be replaced, repaired, updated, whatever. These monitoring systems can be remotely monitored. And I would tell you this, a handheld monitor is probably the worst thing that we could invest in. It might be a short-term fix, but over the long term, an installed monitoring system would probably be a much better investment, especially if we're talking about the cost of replacing a ventilation system. So I'm just giving you my 2 cents on that. Sure. And I know that Rocco could speak to that because this has been around for many, many years. This is not new technology. The remoteness, the ability for it to be monitored remotely is, over the last 10, 15 years. But there are systems that do that.
Yeah, understood. And we saw one in, Paul, you bring up a great point, but we did see one in Armstrong, because I know when I was there last summer, Paul, somebody was sitting at a PC and they could check things. I guess you're saying relative humidity was not part of that?
That's
Only
correct.
temperature and whether intakes were open or closed? Was that part of that system?
That sounds like a control system, Rocco. Something like to adjust your
Yeah.
outside air intake and to maintain a certain moisture level when the system's in operation. I'm more talking about air quality as far as any contaminants like dust, even dust, or if we're bringing in if something's passing through the filter, particulate matter of any type.
Mm-hmm.
But humidity is also one of those things that can be monitored continuously.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about the Armstrong HVAC and the cost of that, I know that I'm just saying. I had 13 different buildings, and I could pull it up on my laptop in my office, and I could look at all of the red flags on the system and make adjustments.
Yeah.
And if there was anything with regard to air quality that was detrimental to staff or students, we could get the word out.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I'm just passing along some information. If we're talking about upgrading a system, get into the 21st century with it. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah. Hey, I have a car that has heated seats, and I love it. But that's not all cars. And maybe Scranton can't afford a car with heated seats at the moment. But do they exist? Absolutely. What I think minimally, you should have that ability to control temp and humidity remotely. Beyond that, I don't see it in normal building construction, continuous VOC monitoring or even particulate monitoring if you have filtration. What we do see is carbon dioxide on-demand systems, so that as occupancies increase in a building, we see a lot of the universities have them. That's what will trigger the ventilation system to run. Is you get 30 kids in, boom, stuff turns on. Nobody's in it for 2 hours, things calm down. But that's definitely a Scranton Electric, who's putting the specs together for Armstrong kind of a question, but you can bring up a good point, no doubt.
So I will set up a time, or I'll set up a date, and I'll send an email to you three gentlemen. Is that okay?
Sounds good to Paul Medor.
Works for me.
Perfect. Perfect. And Rocco, I'll ask you to join us on that
Sure.
walkthrough.
I'd love to, yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, I'll set it up with the schools, and I'll make sure that we, certainly comply with CDC.
Yeah.
And hopefully we could get into yellow phase soon. Rocco, let me ask you this. Not that this is totally off topic. How come, like a supermarket, they can measure by square footage people in the building, and we're kind of relegated to a number?
Because that's open and essential.
Okay. All right. Good answer. Good answer. I just look at Scranton High. It's like 275,000 square feet, and we could only have 10 people in there at a clip.
Yeah, yeah. And if it was a 300,000 square foot tattoo parlor, it still wouldn't be open beyond 10 people.
Okay. Understood. Understood.
We'll be
Okay,
yellow soon enough.
Yep. Yep. I'm hopeful. I'm
Yeah,
hopeful.
we all are.
Yep. Well, thank you, everyone. And I will set up a day for us to walk through. And thank you very much. I have another meeting at 10 o'clock, so I hope it's okay that I sneak off.
But before you go, just to one follow-up from the last couple meetings, I think we discussed posting the presentations that are given during these meetings and the meeting minutes to the task force website. I haven't seen them posted there. I'm not sure if anyone. I think Paul, you had taken an action last week to get that done.
Yeah,
last month.
Jenny, do you have the?
I don't have access to post that. I think I need to get in touch with either Rob Noon or Bill Delpreet.
That's it. If you send it to Rob Noon, he'll post it.
Okay, you got it.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks. And then just the last comment I had, Mrs. Hume, you'll be issuing meeting minutes for today.
I will indeed, Mr. Cobley.
Excellent.
And I do have a couple of attachments. I know the presentation is large, but just for our walkthrough, I have a couple of checklists and one slide in particular I like from today's session that speaks to kind of those 7 areas of action and some things that may trigger discussion. So I'll send that out to Jenny and all of you as soon as I get off the call.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Rocco. Thank you for everything, Rocco.
Oh,
Yeah,
no
thank you
problem.
very much.
Nice to have receptive folks on the other end of the Zoom. So we enjoy it.
So
right.
our next meeting, August 19th, that would be the 3rd Wednesday in August.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
See you
you.
guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
So long.
Thank you.